I feel like I should be on Facebook or something.
We are indeed on Facebook. So um, we are out there. We are live. So yeah, everybody, greetings. Welcome. We'll give it a moment as a few people come on to join us. And so another episode of D Live, the Convo series, as it's known, the big show. Getting a lot of great feedback, a lot of great guests, and a bunch more coming up this week. We've got, the week's booked up and into next week as well. And we're running the gamut. One of the cool things about this is I wanted to reach out to folks from across the city, different neighborhoods, different backgrounds, whether it be business, civic, political leaders from across the city, and just get some of that. Get some of the story, not only what they're up to, but the backstory and how they got here. And I just think that's so cool. And so, speaking of that, welcome, Giacomo, and talk about what's up, man. We got to tell everybody about where you're at right now too, which is even more cool. But when you think of a creative, like that's kind of a buzzword these days, right? A creative in Cincinnati, and we have a great creative community here from all ways, the arts, music, culture, fashion, people into all kinds of cool stuff here in Cincinnati. Food and obviously cocktails is a big part of that. And you're certainly a guy in that regard. So everybody, this is Giacomo Cimonello. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. It's a creative name right off the get-go. And everybody probably recognize it. We've seen him around town at some of the finest watering holes and drinking establishments and a number of other places. So Giacomo, welcome, man. Thank you for being with us tonight and joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
So speaking now, I gotta preface this with this. I'm not that, speaking of creative, I'm not really much of a creative guy. However, when I put your little name tag up that you can't see right now, but you will be able to, I used some creative, about as creative as I could get with some color tones of the fonts, and that's about it. But just kind of tell us, and we'll get to the story of where you're at right now, because that's super cool and creative as well. But so you're not originally from Cincinnati. I think everybody knows you as kind of a fixture around town, but you've been here a while and obviously established yourself. But where'd you start out at?
Yeah, no, we'll take it back. I'm from New Jersey.
Let's go way back.
Way back. Born and raised outside New York City. When I was 17, I applied to art school. I tried to Felicity a girl and follow her to RISD, but I got accepted to University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And I moved there. And then when I moved there, my family moved down to the Jersey Shore, where we had spent countless summers. They actually ended up buying, I had worked at an ice cream / surf shop since I was 13. They ended up buying that.
On the Jersey Shore? That sounds like a really fun summer job for a teenager growing up.
It was the best. I got to teach people how to rollerblade. It was great. That was a big thing. But yeah, we had surfers on staff, and we were just serving up ice cream all the time. We were right across the street from the beach, so it was great. Best way to grow up as a kid, I think. But yeah, I went to Philadelphia. They took over that and went to University of the Arts, downtown Philadelphia, for graphic design. At the time, nobody really knew what the hell graphic design was. I don't even know if my mom still knows what that is. It's just, it's this catch-all for things that you can design. Like whenever I say, I was a designer, people are always like, oh, really? Like what? Like logos? Like, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, but it's like so much more. And,
right.
I've been doing it for, 25, 30 years now. So it's just been everything.
So, and that's really,
but yeah.
And for me, being like a designer, an artist, or anything along those lines, like stick figures is about the extent of it, and maybe changing the colors of the fonts. But I mean, did you know that? Like as a kid, were you artistic, or into that kind of thing, or how's that come about? How'd you decide to go that route?
Yeah, it's crazy. Most of my family is actually they were in military or something like that, except for a few like people here and there. Like my grandmother, she was artistic. But at the same time, she worked for the Passaic County like detectives narcotics unit.
Really?
Yeah, and then like my mom, she was a model growing up, but she got really into photography, and then she got into like crafts and pottery and watercolor. So I've always like exposed to it on that side. So while everybody else went off to join the military, I was the artist, and I picked it up. I was always interested in different types of medium. So I would get bored with something, so I'd be like into oil painting, and then I'd move on to watercolor, and then drawing. But that's what was great about graphic design is like it's just this field that you make graphics, and it can literally be in any medium.
Right.
And that's where I took it. I kind of like went with it and ran with it. And then I graduated from UArts in like '99, and at that time the web was in an infancy right then. And a bunch of guys who were all like 19, 20, 21 years old, started a little startup, and people were paying us way too much money at 21 years old to make these website things. And there wasn't a lot of us around. There was only like one or two companies in Philly. There was like three in New York at the time. And, we were basically going 100 miles an hour for a couple of years, just living way too well, making websites that don't matter much in the end. And then 9/11 happened, and that was when I had my first sort of career pivot. The .com pretty much burst as soon as that happened,
Right.
and a lot of people lost their jobs, just like now, kind of. And I kind of hustled for a little bit, freelance design work, which is, its own sort of animal. But then I got picked up by an advertising agency, and I was with them for almost 10 years. And I did everything with them. That what was great about advertising is you could do film, you could do websites, you could do interactive. And they like to push boundaries, take risks. It wasn't sort of this like safe kind of like normal as we go ad work. It was like really kind of risque stuff. So got to do that for about 10 years. And then I pivoted again for some weird reason.
So at what point, and I know you went back and got a master's in industrial design. I know you've done some teaching in that regard as well, but at some point you pivot all the way to Cincinnati. So what led you to the fine Queen City?
Well, that actually, it was the industrial design work. That was, so my big pivot again, like, you get a little burned out doing something again and again and again. In the ad agency world, like all of a sudden, literally overnight, all of the major players that were like running these ad agencies, they just like left. And it was around that time that I was like kind of struggling with that career as well. And I was like, and there was this word floating around called social design, and nobody really knew what it was. It didn't make a lot of sense. A lot of people still can't figure it out. But I was actually teaching at UArts at the time as well, and I was talking to another faculty member, and he was starting up this graduate program through the industrial design program that, yes, it's a master's in industrial design, but it's not like traditional industrial design work. We're not designing packages. We're not designing products. We're going to take this social route. So we went out to this conference in California called Design for Change. And it really just spoke about how all these designers are coming together and they're using the design processes that they're learning, and they're applying it to like real world scenarios, not just film and TV and ads and all that stuff. They're applying it to just like how you do your daily life. So watching how people brush their teeth, and can they brush their teeth in a more efficient way, or just how they do their finances, or like all these weird things that you wouldn't think to apply the design process to. And it was mind-boggling. It was like the moment where it's like, okay, I can take all of my training, and instead of creating a logo that doesn't affect anything, I can help change the world a little bit and like kind of tweak someone's world enough to make them live their life better. So went back to grad school for that. Met some of my best friends. Graduated with like 10 of the most amazing people from literally around the world. I got friends over in like Taiwan right now. My best friend, he's still back in Philly. But this one girl that was my best friend through the program, she was from Kansas City, Missouri. And I was pretty much just living Philly life. Like, I had been up and down but had never really explored past that point. And we always talked about how she was going through like a culture shock, moving to Philadelphia and going through this design program. And when the moment came to graduate, I was like, oh, well, this opportunity popped up in Cincinnati. There's not a lot of firms doing like social design.
Yep.
And there happened to be one out here. It wasn't a job for them, but it was for a job with a company that was sort of like their parent company at the time. So you have a chance to like work with them, but also do some like crazy design stuff. And yeah, the work I got to do out here was like medical design research. So it wasn't traditional design work. It was also kind of using design thinking to, come up with medical procedures, which I have zero medical training.
Right.
But, as a designer using it was basically like me, like being allowed to like be in an operating room and then using my design thinking and my design observation. And I'm like the annoying 4-year-old, like constantly tugging on the doctor's shoulder, like, why are you doing that? Like, why? But it was really cool. I got to like take this design world into a place I never thought possible.
No, that's awesome. So, not being from that realm, like just how you're applying those processes to, how it applies to all these different things is really cool. And then, probably continues to manifest itself, right? So you, in different ways and other things that you're involved in now. So, so you had a job opportunity here in Cincinnati, and you washed up on the shores of the mighty Ohio at some point. What year are we talking about?
That was 2011.
Okay.
And I still remember that. It was crazy. Like I didn't know. I had about a week to move out here. I didn't know anything about Cincinnati. Hadn't really seen the landscape, the geography, whatever. I remember being like, I know what my budget is. I can get a place for like $1,000 a month. It turned out to be like this, because that's what I was paying in Philly for like a 10 by 13 room, basically. But then I come out here, I'm like, it's 6 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. It's up on Park Ave or in like some place called Eden Park. Like, yeah, sure. It's like 2 miles from where I got to go. I can bike everywhere. This is what I did in Philly. I'll just bike to work every day. I didn't realize I was on the top of a mountain or a hill. I'd have to like do some hill climbing out here. Didn't know that.
Build the cardio up. So what were your? Tell me. I'm interested to hear this. As somebody from not here, I'm originally from the Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio, and clearly have adopted Cincinnati and love this place dearly, and the people and all of our assets that you know about. What were your initial impressions at that time, and in that 2011, 2012 time frame? Downtown, things are changing, and there was probably much more, although we've had with Procter & Gamble and our marketing and design firms related to our industry that we have here, and packaging and all those kinds of things, and branding and advertising. That was really a time of transition for the city of Cincinnati, where we were really starting to embrace this culture and this kind of more of a, I don't know, it's buzzwords, vibrancy and all of that, but it was just almost something you couldn't put your finger on, but it was there, just a vibe. Did you sense that, or what was your sense at that time?
No, I did. I mean, the first 2 months here, I mean, I was in a honeymoon phase, right? So everything is new. I was sort of understanding where my friend in grad school, like that little culture shock moving from the East Coast, kind of in reverse, going to something at a much slower pace. I was enamored with the city. I remember the first week I would like walk around, because that's how I get to know a place. I was like walking up to like 12th and 13th Street. And at the time, Washington Park wasn't done yet. It was still the old Washington Park. I think Lava-Matic was the only thing on Orange Street at the time. And I would go back to work and everyone's like, what did you do yesterday? I'm like, I walked up to like, 14th Street or whatever. And they're like, what? And they would like stare at me and like, you're like, and you're okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't understand. Like I come from a place that was nicknamed Philadelphia. Okay. Like we had like 2 murders a day. Like Cincinnati is not very intimidating to me. So, and the group that I was,
that's a great point. Let me interrupt you right there for a moment, because, so often we have these perceptions of neighborhoods, perceptions of cities, and they kind of take on a life of their own at the time. And a lot of times my sense is that that's just people being inside their own head. believing a certain thing. Oftentimes it's a race-based scenario where people are just afraid of people that don't look like them. Although, Over the Rhine was one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country for a long time. But generally speaking, if you're not trying to buy drugs or sell drugs, you're usually okay for the most part. And especially if you're from an urban area, you know how to carry yourself and all of those kinds of things. But I think so much of that, especially here, where we were changing that narrative. But yet you still to this day really have people that, it's so dangerous down there, I'm going to die. And so it's just kind of crazy because I lived through that, having bought this place in 2010, and just trying to overcome all of those negative stereotypes and kind of almost a self-deprecating thing that we needed to, get past. So it was interesting that you experienced that kind of same mindset.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember I wrote a little blog post like the week that I got here, and I was still pretty much, I mean, I still am in love with Cincinnati, don't get me wrong, but like there was these top 10 things that I thought Cincinnati was just like blowing out of the water. And part of it was like the people, obviously it's very different out here than it is on the East Coast. The East Coast is like completely kind of blue, liberal, everyone's got one mind, they're all working towards one sort of reality. And then out here, what I really loved was there was a debate and there was a discussion. And these people that I work with, while they were 10 years younger than me, they were like mid-20s, they were had the wife, the 2 kids, the dog, and the picket fence, and they lived outside the loop. And they left work every day at like 5:01. And like, that wasn't my life. I mean, on the East Coast, I didn't leave work until like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night sometimes. Sometimes I didn't leave work at all. Like, it was a hustle out there, and it was a 6 or 7 day a week hustle. So to have almost that weird kind of switch for people where you're having this discussion of like, well, this is my perspective having just moved here versus your perspective having lived here your whole life. Like, it was weird. We had like, we didn't click on a lot of that for a little bit.
And that's good, I think, to have that, sometimes that outside viewpoint, and not have those preconceived notions that, may not actually be correct, even though you're living there. But, I think a lot of times we tend to forget that. I use the phrase, we used to roll up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock. Everybody left downtown. If they came back, it was just to go to a Reds game and park there at the Banks or, the stadium that preceded the Banks, Riverfront, and then got the hell out, and so really watching this evolution of the city, and now we're seeing it, outside of the core, but in our neighborhoods as well, where, it's really a live, work, play type of scenario, and it is almost as more of a, not necessarily the coast, but it's Chicago, that we just don't go to sleep at 5 o'clock.
Right.
And there's a nightlife, and obviously a great nightlife scene, which you became part of as well in the hospitality industry, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was a bit of a journey to get there. I mean, I did the design thing for 3 more years, and it was for, I had this weird, when you're in graduate school and you're doing social design, you think you're gonna I'm just gonna take my ideas and I'm gonna start these grassroots like design principles. We're gonna go to these, Fortune 5 companies. We're gonna change the way they think, and you're like, nah. No, you're not going to change anything. And it's kind of like 3 years of just beating your head against the wall there. But I did that, and then all of a sudden, I was living on Park Ave, which is near Brew House, and got to go there a lot because it's the only food source basically in Walnut Hills at the time. So I'd get home at 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock at night and go get a burger up the street, and got to know the owners, and they needed like a bartender like 2 nights a week. And I was like, yeah, I'm not really doing anything. I didn't have any friends. Like, it is impossible, or it was at the time, to make friends in Cincinnati if you didn't go to high school here. Like, it was really bad. I remember actually my first friends that I made were actually Bob Schwartz, and I met him over Twitter. And
that was like peak OTR downtown Twitter was about in that 2012 to 2014 time frame. Schwartz was, well, he still is. He's Schwartz, but that's if you're gonna meet somebody first, it's probably gonna be Bob. That's for sure, and Miss Schwartz.
Oh, yeah, and it was within like first 2 days of like, I'm like, who is this guy? Like, we're tweeting, we're having conversations. Like, Cincinnati is gonna be great. I'm gonna meet people all the time. But no, I didn't. I made like 10 friends on Twitter that first week, and I didn't meet him for like years. Like, it was crazy. It was so weird. But yeah, so I started working at a brew house up the street, and then, you know, I just really got into side projects, which is something you could do in Cincinnati. Like, it's hard to do that in Philly or the East Coast because it's a 24-hour game and you're constantly hustling. But yeah, I started to get into preservation. I still walked around the city. I was still amazed that there were abandoned houses across the street from Central Park, basically, which is Washington Park, and it's these beautiful, 200-year-old houses. So I joined a group of like young professionals, the Cincinnati Preservation Society, and eventually I just kept asking, like, well, why aren't we just buying a house and renovating it? And then that's when I got into sort of restoring houses. It became my big art project, more or less.
So now like you're living a design project now, which is actually where you're at. So share with us a little bit about that, where you're at right now. You are in the West End in an amazing historic structure that you're working on, and share with us that story, because I absolutely share your passion for historic preservation and our architecture here in Cincinnati and preserving these old gals.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember by 2012, and OTR was still pretty like half. It was coming up there, but there was so many abandoned homes, and they're beautiful, and it's Italianate and historic, and I had never in my life seen this many houses next to each other with this much detail, like these brownstones with just plywood, just covering all the windows and everything. So, and this is like walking through some of the worst areas of Philly or Brooklyn or New York and all that. And I got a little obsessed, and I did a lot of history lessons. I tried to learn about OTR, like, why is this happening? I learned about the riots, and I was like, okay, sort of makes sense. And then you keep digging, and then find other people that are just trying to make people aware about, the Cincinnati Preservation Society was doing that. And, we'd meet once a month, and then I eventually was like, well, I'm just going to buy this house. And I tried to buy a house over on, I believe it was Pleasant, just south of the Lee Market at the time. The jump hadn't been made to go across Liberty. Like, this was still, I guess 2013, where a lot of the work was being done, I guess, like maybe like south of 13th Street. But houses were getting bought up. Like, streetcar was a big thing. God, coming from a major city with like public transportation, I just kept shaking my head. That's when I was like starting to lose a little faith in people of Cincinnati. Like, why are we having a debate about this? Like, having a debate about public transportation. Like, everyone just needs to relax.
Speaking from personal experience, it has been quite a struggle. And on that note, it was because of the streetcar that I chose to move in here in 2010 and buy my place where I'm at, because I grew up in Cleveland, riding the train into downtown. And so not knowing, similar to yourself, not knowing all of the backstory and the history, just thought, oh, okay, we're doing this. We're building it. It shows a major commitment from the city, and then we have plans, and we're going to go up to this, and it was all this, and then it just turns into this big, battle that really we're still fighting to this day, unfortunately, while we see other cities just moving forward. Kansas City's working on their 3.5 mile extension, et cetera, et cetera. And meanwhile, it's just such a struggle here. But fortunately, there are engaged people. And hopefully we change this narrative, over time. But it's a long game. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like at the time, I was like, Washington Park's not opening yet. They're going to put in this rail car, like all these abandoned houses. Like, how can I get in on this? Because I grew up, like, Philly was a hellhole when I moved there in like 95, and it blew up. Missed on that boat, missed on the Brooklyn boat, missed on a whole bunch of things. And it's all these little things that Cincinnati is like doing. And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to buy a house. Yeah, it's an investment, but I also like plan on living here. I'm not going to just flip it and, turn it kind of thing. So I was driving past this one, had a foreclosed sign on it. It's in the West End. Didn't know anything about the West End at the time, but I mean, it's only 4 blocks from Findlay Market. So might as well learn about the West End. And ended up pretty much within 6 days. It was the scariest thing in my life. I put an offer in, they countered, I countered, clicked to buy on the internet. This was a company in like Texas.
And next thing you know, and 6 years later, it's almost ready. And I think that's a really important point. I think it's been about that long that you've owned this property, and thank you for doing that, investing in, saving this. And I know from one of the windows there, you can see I-75 from where you're at. We know the long history of the West End and the displacement of people and the just mass destruction of our historic, buildings and infrastructure that were just it just almost makes you ill thinking about it, and the people and the stories that went with it. But the other thing that you find out is that, folks, it's not easy doing this. Every one of these old buildings that's renovated in my condo building or complex, if you want to call it that, under our HOA, we have 5 buildings, 2 are new construction and 3 are historic. It's a tremendous amount of work, not only to rehab them and the expenses that you have had no idea where the money it's like there's a hole in the basement. It just goes down there. Maybe it's an old lagering cellar or something. But the amount of work and resources that goes into it. So everybody that's taken that on, and obviously yourself included, thank you for doing that. And it's not easy, and nothing's guaranteed. So what's that process been like for you?
It's been a struggle at times. I took the purposeful route of not really applying for any loans at all. When I bought the house, it was around the time when I was thinking of transitioning out of the full-time secure job of a paycheck and going into bartending. So you go from like knowing what you're going to make to, maybe it's a Good Friday, maybe it's not.
Right.
So I didn't want to, if you do the quick math, this is 6,000 square feet. Even if I did at $100 a square foot, which is near impossible, you're looking at, close to a $250,000 loan. So I wasn't ready to sign any papers on that one.
Right.
So, and that's what you have to do. That's the unfortunate side of like when you are asking for a construction loan and all that, you have to give plans for the entire build out, not just piecemeal. You can't just say, well, I'm going to build out the first floor and I need, $100,000 for that and then go back and get more. It just doesn't work like that. And around the time, a lot of development, little small upstarts were popping up, and they had more behind them. They had more capital. They had more successes. So they were getting the money, and that's fine. That's how they went. I just decided to do it room by room and floor by floor.
And you're and I think your dad was a contractor, right, growing up. So you had some experience, and your engineering background obviously would help with this.
Yeah.
And so basically, this has been a one-man show, the Giacomo show, there in the West End, bringing this baby back to life. And are you getting close? Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel at some point?
It's crazy. I mean, you do these little things because a lot of times I'm waiting on contractors to get back to you for different things like quotes on electric and plumbing. So you do what you can. And then, with the quarantine, I've just had time to focus everything on like one area, and we finally got one room done. And I don't know, I broke down and cried because it's like 6 years in and you have basically, all the walls, well, still need a door there, but all the windows, we even have electric fans, all the detailed stuff. And this is going to be the room where someday I'm going to wake up every day. That's kind of awesome. 6 years in, I finally have a bedroom. So.
Well, it certainly is, it's clear it's a labor of love, and it has to be. There's just so much involved with it. And so again, thank you for doing that. Thank you for putting in the sweat equity, investing in Cincinnati and one of these, magical old buildings that has such a story to tell. So with that kind of brings us up to the present day. And, you've worked at a number of bars, very popular spots. And, you might be one of the only, if not the only, scoopologist that I know today. So tell me, what's the latest with that when your day job now, assuming, we all know the turmoil that we're all going through right now, especially in the hospitality sector. How is that going, and what's your latest project in that regard?
It's going okay. We were one of the first places we actually decided to shut down before the state mandated. So I work at Branch at Night Drop up in Walnut Hills, which is part of the Littlefield group. They have Littlefield in second place over at Northside. And the owners felt pretty adamant that this was going to come anyways. They wanted to get ahead of it. So we've actually been shut down a little bit longer than everybody. We try to take care of our employees. We got everybody on unemployment. Thank God, most of them, I believe, 90% of them are on unemployment. They're going to be fine. We're going to have a weird moment where no one's going to want to come back to work because they're actually making a heck of a lot more money now than they were while they were working for us. But we need to try to keep the doors open. So we decided to kind of do a little Shake Shack, if you will. Littlefield, and they're doing it in Northside, and we're doing the same thing up in Walnut Hills. We're just running it Wednesday through Saturday from 5 to 8. We have limited quantities. We're going to do special milkshakes, which is what I'm sort of known for.
Boozy. And then, I mean, who doesn't like a boozy shake, right? Now, how does that? Now, how does that work? If I got to go to work or do something, I can get a regular shake. But who wants that? I want a boozy shake, right? Break that down for me. How does that work? What should I order when I come up there?
I mean, if you have to operate heavy machinery, I wouldn't get the boozy shake. But yeah, no, we've got a little bit of everything. So our standards are going to be we're doing like a Saved by the Bell theme. So I got the Slater, which has got chocolate, caramel, Oreos, and rye whiskey in it. Yep, there you go. all the protein for a growing boy.
Right.
And then we got the crowd favorite, which is basically a cookies and cream with some caramel and bourbon and amaretto. That's a good one.
Sounds good.
Every day we do something special, so I try and change it up. We did like a coffee one on Saturday. I think I'm going to have like a strawberry jalapeno one coming up this week, maybe a cornbread and jalapeno as well. That one's really good.
That's like a whole meal in a shake with booze.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat
very cool.
Yeah, and you know what? On that note, I mean, the state needs to. So you're doing these carry out now, obviously, right? Because they changed the rule on that, so the bars can do carry out liquor for now. I mean, I hope that, am I alone on this? I hope that rule sticks around. That's some vestige of prohibition or whatever. It's like the dumbest thing. We can do daiquiris. We can do different stuff like this. This is cool. I think, especially to help our bars now that when they do open back up, they're going to need all the help they can get.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they change the rules every day, so we have to keep adapting. But I mean, we've always wanted to have some sort of carry out, or I forget what it's called, the open container law that can go at least through entertainment districts or something like that.
Right.
It would help a lot. I mean, we're not going to be the same. I don't think any restaurant / bars definitely aren't going to be the same. We're already designed for anti-social distancing, let alone even if we can fit half the people in, that's not going to make ends meet. So it'll be an interesting, next year, I think.
Right.
Coming up.
No, there's certain, and I think that's part of our collective anxiety right now. And everybody's searching for answers. I want to know the date when this is going to happen, the date when that's going to happen. And, kind of the moral of the story is we just don't know at this point. And so, we do the best we can and kind of muddle through it and try to be safe, I guess. So what's the location up there in Walnut Hills? And give us the times and the dates again, and maybe any social media. So if people want to track you down up there and try one of these awesome sounding boozy shakes, they know where to go.
We're at the corner of Woodburn and Madison, right near DeSales Corner, across from Woodburn Tap Room. And you can also go to Littlefield, which is over on Spring Grove Ave. And we're Wednesday through Saturday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. You don't need to call ahead, just kind of show up. We make it pretty quick to order, about 5-10 minutes, depending on the line. And check Drink It Drop Instagram. And that'll be where all the menus are. We have our special shakes of the day. We're going to have some pretty cool specials coming up, too. If you're a first responder, because I'm from a first responder family, your virgin shake, that's on us. You come up, flash your badge. I got your shake.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for doing that. I don't know if retired counts, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and pay. I'm gonna go ahead and pay anyway and support the cause. So, Giacomo, man, I really appreciate you being on the show tonight. This is great. I know so many people have seen you around town and engaged with you and never knew the Giacomos story. And they're at your house that's finally nearing completion after all after all that blood, sweat, and tears, I'm sure. So thank you so much for adopting Cincinnati, investing in us, and being a part of our community. It's awesome and great to have you on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And Cincinnati's been fantastic. Wouldn't have the mustache without Cincinnati. So
you have enough facial hair for I think for the both of us going on there. So hey, thanks, man. Everybody, stay tuned Monday through Thursday at 7 o'clock. We're doing D-Live, the Convo series. We've got more great guests coming up. If you happen to miss the show, check it out on Facebook. It'll stay posted here, but also putting it to my YouTube channel. Please go check out, search Derek Bauman. That'll pop up over there, and you can see all of the archive shows on there as well if you want to go and check those out. At Derek Bauman, Twitter, Instagram, and we'll be back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, D-Live. Giacomo, thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you.
Peace, Cincinnati. Have a good night, everybody. Be safe.